The void was never truly silent, Marcus. Ryland had learned that years ago during his first patrol beyond the outer colonies. Space hummed with radiation, whispered with distant stellar winds, and groaned under the weight of gravity, wells light, years wide, but the silence that filled the bridge of the HFS Vindicator now was different. It was the silence of absence, the silence of something that should have been there but wasn't. Marcus stood at the command deck viewport, hands clasped behind his back, staring at the coordinates where Sarek colony should have been visible. His reflection stared back at him from the reinforced glass. Man in his late 40s, jaw-tight, eyes shadowed by something heavier than exhaustion. Behind him, the bridge crew worked in near silence, their fingers moving across holographic displays with practiced efficiency. No one spoke unless necessary. No one wanted to be the first to say what they all already knew. Lieutenant Amara Chen broke the silence. Her voice was steady, but Marcus heard the tremor beneath it. Captain, long-range scanners are picking up debris, a lot of debris. Structural signatures match colonial housing units, terraforming equipment, and life support pods. She paused, her fingers hovering over the display. No active transponders, no distress signals, nothing. Marcus didn't turn. He kept his eyes on the black. How long ago? Approximately 72 hours, sir. The radiation decay suggests high yield plasma bombardment, multiple strikes, systematic coverage. Systematic. That word landed like a stone in Marcus' chest. The Zarn didn't fight wars for territory or resources. They fought to erase, to humiliate, to remind the galaxy that mercy was a weakness they exploited without hesitation. And now they had done it again. Bring us in, Marcus said quietly, full sensor sweep. I want to know what happened. Here, the Vindicator's engines thr as the massive warship glided forward, flanked by 2 destroyer escorts and a medical frigate. The fleet had arrived too late to save anyone, but Marcus refused to leave without knowing the truth. As they closed the distance, the debris field came into view, a graveyard of twisted metal, shattered habitation domes, and frozen bodies tumbling slowly through the void. Some still wore civilian clothing. Some were children. Amara's hands shook as she adjusted the scanner resolution. Sir, I'm detecting residual energy signatures. Zarn plasma cannons confirmed. At least 6 capital ships participated in the attack. They glassed the entire surface before moving to the orbital stations. There was no warning, no communication. They just opened fire. Marcus clenched his jaw so hard his teeth knocked. Sarek had been a peaceful colony, farmers, engineers, families, trying to build something better on the edge of human space. They had no military presence, no strategic value. They were just people, and the Zarn had slaughtered them like cattle. Captain, said Commander Oren Voss from the tactical station, his voice low and rough. Voss was a veteran of the border wars, a man who had seen more death than most and carried it in the lines of his face. Were picking up movement. 3 light hours out, Zarn scout vessels moving away from the system at high speed. Marcus turned slowly, his eyes locking onto the tactical display. 3 red markers blinked at the edge of sensor range, fleeing into the dark. They were running. The Zarn had done their work, and now they were retreating, confident that no one would follow, confident that humanity would do what it always did: mourn, rebuild, and wait for the next attack. Do they know we're here? Marcus asked. Voss shook his head. Not yet. They're running dark, but their engine signatures are still hot. If we move now, we can intercept them before they reach the relay point. The bridge went quiet again. Every officer on deck knew what Marcus was considering. The standing orders from Earth Command were clear: pursue only self-defense, avoid escalation, and report all hostile contact for diplomatic review. Humanity had spent decades playing defense, trying to negotiate, trying to prove they weren't a threat, and all it had earned them was another 100,000 dead. Marcus looked back at the viewport, at the bodies drifting through the wreckage. He thought of the families who would never know what happened to their loved ones. He thought of the children who had died without understanding why, and he thought of the Zarn commanders who had given the order, who were probably laughing about it right now. Captain Amara's voice was soft, uncertain. Marcus straightened his shoulders. His voice, when it came, was ice. Sound battle stations. All ships intercept course. Maximum burn. I want those scouts disabled and boarded within the hour. Voss didn't hesitate. Yes, sir. All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. The Vindicators' alarms blared to life as the crew scrambled to their posts. The warships' engines roared, propelling the fleet forward with a violence that matched the fury in Marcus' chest. The Zarn had made a mistake. They had assumed humanity would stay quiet. They had assumed humanity would grieve and move on. They were wrong. As the distance closed, Marcus watched the red markers on the display grow larger. The Zarn scouts hadn't noticed them yet, still running at full speed, still confident in their escape. But confidence was a luxury they no longer deserved. Marcus leaned forward, his voice cutting through the bridge like a blade. All weapons prepare to fire. No warnings, no mercy. I want them crippled, not destroyed. We're taking prisoners. Amara glanced at him, surprise flickering across her face. Prisoners, sir. Marcus' eyes never left the display. I want to look them in the eye. I want them to know what's coming. The fleet surged forward into the black, and for the first time in decades, humanity wasn't running, they were hunting. Takari Rift was a wound in space itself, a region of collapsed stars and gravitational anomalies where sensors went blind and navigation became guesswork. The Zarn had built their empire here because no sane species would dare follow them into the dark. But sanity, Marcus had decided, was a luxury humanity could no longer afford. The Vindicator led a strike force of 12 ships through the rift's outer edge, moving slowly, carefully, like a blade sliding between ribs. The darkness pressed against the viewports, broken only by the occasional flicker of distant radiation storms. On the bridge, every station was manned, every officer silent and focused. They had crossed the point of no return hours ago. There would be no reinforcements, no rescue, only the mission. Amara's voice cut through the tension. Captain, we're approaching the first target, Zarn fuel depot, heavily defended. At least 4 capital ships in orbit, multiple defense platforms. Marcus studied the tactical display. The fuel depot was massive, a network of storage tanks and refinery stations, orbiting a dying red giant. Without it, the Zarn fleets in this sector would be grounded within weeks. It was the first Domino, if they could topple it, the rest would follow. All ships attack. Formation Delta, Marcus ordered. Destroyers take point, focus fire on the defense platforms. Vindicator will handle the capital. Ship's precision strikes only. I want that fuel intact for as long as possible, then we light it up on our way out. The fleet splits smoothly, each ship moving to its assigned position. Zarn defenders were slow to react, complacent in their belief that no one would dare attack them here. By the time their sensors registered the human ships, the first salvo was already inbound. The Vindicator's rail gun spoke in thunder, hurling destruction across the void. 2 defense platforms exploded. In brilliant flashes, their debris scattering like burning rain. The Zarn capital ships scrambled to respond, their plasma batteries lighting up the darkness, but the human destroyers were already dancing through their firing solutions, hitting weak points with brutal efficiency. One Zarn cruiser tried to ram the nearest destroyer, a desperate gambit born of panic. The destroyer's point defense systems shredded at mid approach, turning the massive vessel into a cloud of shrapnel. Another cruiser attempted to flee, its engines burning hard, but a spread of missiles from the Vindicator's tubes caught it at the engine block, splitting the ship in half. Within 10 minutes, the orbital defense was shattered. The fuel depot hung in space, undefended and vulnerable. Marcus gave the order in a single torpedo streak toward the largest storage tank. The explosion was spectacular, a miniature sun blooming in the void, consuming everything within a dozen kilometers. The shock wave rattled the Vindicator's hull, and Marcus gripped the edge of the command console, watching the light fade. Target destroyed, boss reported, his voice grim. No survivors detected. Marcus nodded. Next target. We don't stop until they have nothing left to burn. For 3 days, the human fleet carved a path of destruction through the Takari Rift. Supply depots became graveyards. Repair stations became debris fields. Communication relays went silent, one by one, isolating the Zarn forces from each other. The galaxy had never seen humanity fight like this, relentless, surgical, merciless. The Zarn had taught them well, but Marcus knew the real target was still ahead. The breeding clusters, the heart of Zarn power. If they could strike there, if they could, the source of the Zarn war machine, the rest of their empire would collapse under its own weight. The fleet emerged from a gravitational eddy into open space, and there it was, the Zarn home cluster, massive orbital construct surrounding a binary star system with hundreds of ships docked along its spiraling arms. This was where Zarn warriors were born, trained, and launched into the galaxy. This was the Nightmare Factory. Amara's voice was tight. Captain, we're detecting at least 60 capital ships. Twice that in smaller vessels. They know we're here. They're mobilizing. Marcus stared at the cluster, his mind racing through scenarios, through possibilities. They were outnumbered, outgunned. But the Zarn had made a mistake. They had built their entire civilization in one place, believing it was untouchable. And now humanity was going to prove them wrong. All ships converge on the primary docking arm, Marcus said. We're not here to win a fleet engagement. We're here to send a message. Voss looked at him sharply. Sir. Marcus pointed at the cluster's central reactor assembly, a massive fusion core that powered the entire structure. We hit that, the whole thing goes. Critical, everything here dies. The weight of those words hung in the air. Thousands of Zarn, maybe tens of thousands. Not all of them warriors. Some would be young, barely hatched. Some would be engineers, technicians. Civilians in their own right, but Marcus thought of Sarek, he thought of the children drifting frozen through space. He thought of every colony the Zarn had glassed, every family they had erased. Without a second thought, do it, he said. The Vindicator surged forward, the fleet tight behind it. The Zarn ships moved to intercept, their formations tight and disciplined, but they were protecting a static target. The humans were a spear aimed at the heart. Plasma fire lit up the void as both sides opened fire, and the space between them became a storm of death. The Vindicator's shields flared under the assault, alarm screaming across the bridge, hull breaches on decks 4 and 7, fires in the port engine bay. Casualties mounting, but Marcus kept his eyes on the target, watching the distance shrink. 2 destroyers fell, torn apart by concentrated fire. Frigates spiraled away, venting atmosphere and crew, but the rest pressed on. Firing solution locked, Vase said, his voice steady despite the chaos. Ready. On your order, Captain. Marcus didn't hesitate. Fire. The Vindicator's main cannon discharged a spear of coherent energy that punched through shields, through armor, through bulkheads, straight into the reactor core. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the core destabilized and the fusion reaction went runaway. The explosion was biblical. The entire cluster tore itself apart from the inside out, each docking arm breaking away in sequence, each section consumed by fire and light. The Zarn ships caught in the blast simply ceased to exist. Vaporized in an instant, the shock wave caught the surviving human vessels and flung them backward, systems screaming. But they held together. Marcus watched the light fade, watched the debris scatter, watched the heart of Zarn power die, and he felt nothing, no triumph, no guilt, only the cold certainty that it had been necessary. All ships withdraw, he ordered, back to human space, maximum burn. The battered fleet turned and fled into the dark, leaving behind a graveyard of fire and ash. Behind them the Zarn Empire was crippled, leaderless, scattered. It would take them years to rebuild, if they ever did, and in that time, humanity would be ready. As the Vindicator limped toward home, Marcus stood alone at the viewport, staring at the stars. He had crossed a line today. He had become something he never wanted to be, but Sarek would not happen again. Not on his watch. The age of mercy was over. The age of survival had begun, and humanity, for better or worse, would never be prey again.